So, the golden age of Mexican cinema. Here's my table of contents. I'm going to start from 1910 to the 1920s in the background. The Mexican Revolution had a huge impact on this. So I'm going to go a little bit about it. The citizens had a lot of resentment towards the Mexican government, mostly towards Porfirio Diaz, who was a corrupt government person, and they wanted Francisco Madero to win presidency. But because of Porfirio, he threw Madero in jail. So that was a last straw for them. There was a lot of fighting going on in the war, which led to money problems, and their government didn't have a set structure. Pancho Villa was an important figure and is later an important figure for movies. When Mexico started to create films, the government was in shambles because of the revolution. There was also a lot of uncertainty in the industry because it was new technology for them. There were some hits in the start of film production, but not a lot. One of these was Que Viva Mexico. It was directed by Sergei Einstein, and even though he isn't Mexican, he played a huge part in the Mexican aesthetic for films. He was big during the militant phase of Latin American cinema, and this film, Que Viva Mexico, is about it's about the Mexican Revolution and interprets Mexico's economic history. This is when the Golden Age started. So these are the first popular films. The first one's Let's Go with Pancho Villa. Pancho Villa was an important figure in the revolution. So a lot of citizens of Mexico appreciated this movie. It was directed by Fernando de Fuentes, who is said to have launched the golden age of cinema. Llano Rancho Grande is another one of his films, and this was also a bigger film because it gave birth to the Mexican genre. This mostly means that other Mexican films include bars, drinking tequila, as well as Mexican music. Jorge Negrete was a big part of this, of including Mexican music in films. So he played ranchero music. So when World War II started, it stopped a lot of the film industries in Germany, France, England, and the US. Most of their films that they were creating were also just propaganda films. So there wasn't a lot of spread of genres. The US decided to give Mexico some money so they can get their films going. And Mexico didn't go into the war until 1942 because their ship was sunk, but they still had more resources to keep creating films. So, because countries were creating propaganda films, there was a lot of genre expansion in Mexico. They created drama, music, comedy, romance. Their horror films also paved way for the 1960s horror genre popularity. Slapstick comedy was also prominent in their golden era. Most comedy included ranchero music as well as rumbera music. The picture on the side is Cantinflas, which is Mario Moreno, and he was an important figure in comedy. Another prominent movie in this film age was Maria Candelaria. The main female character, which is Dolores del Rio, paved the way for similar people to gain success in the north of the border. And this film won 2 prizes, which put Mexican film on the world cinematic map. These are some important people from this age, like Maria Felix, who made it more noticeable for women to get acting careers that didn't have to do with being wives and stuff like that. Another one was Emilio Fernandez, who was an actor. Pedro Infante, who was an actor and a singer, so he played a lot of roles with singing in it. There was Miguel Contreras, who was an actor, screenwriter, film producer, and director, who successfully transitioned from silent films to talkies. Luis Buñuel, who is said to be one of the most influential and greatest filmmakers of all time, and he formed Spanish surrealism. And Gabriel Figueroa, who was a cinematographer, and he was a prominent Mexican film artist to achieve the international fame. He also shot a dozen of important movies. One of the movies was called Allá en el Rancho Grande. So this is the end of the golden era, which ended in 1959 according to a lot of sources. Okay, so after the government got money, they created a school of cinema. Most of the original films created during this time period were because of Emilio Fernandez, Gabriel Figueroa, Mauricio Magdaleno, Gloria Schumann. It's credited with creating the first national aesthetic in Latin American cinema. It used established Hollywood stars as a primary marketing device. After World War II ended in 1945, which was when Mexican films began to compete with Hollywood products in the market, the U.S. changed their policy they had with Mexico. The policy was called the Good Neighbor Policy, which helped Mexico get money and resources to start producing film. This policy was exchanged for the Cold War one, which prioritized Hollywood film production. Spain and the U.S. also had an agreement which stopped Mexico from exporting films. So Mexico also had some internal and external factors that prevented it. For example, Mexico had union rules, which made it difficult to create new innovative films by keeping new talent out of the system. They also hadn't protected their film industry as strongly as they should have against Hollywood, and in the end, that led to their loss of ability to compete head to head with Hollywood in the 40s. Today, Mexico continues to produce important movies with social consciousness. A lot of these different movies had to do with the social system, government, and stuff like that. As you can tell if you either watch the movies or read some things about them. So, thanks for listening. This is the end of my presentation.